Welcome back to the Impact Podcast, where we explore the present and future of workplace design, employee experience, and how organizations can create spaces where people genuinely want to be. Today, we are thrilled to welcome someone who has been shaping that conversation for more than 2 decades. Mette Johansen Keating, the founder of Metaspace, a global leader in designing healthy, purposeful workplaces across North America and Europe. Mette's approach blends Danish design sensibility, neuroscience, biophilia, leadership strategy, and a deeply human understanding of how physical space impacts our well being and performance. Her work has been featured in the Globe and Mail, Financial Post, Canadian Business, and she's spoken at leading design and architecture events. She is also the author of the powerful book, Space That Speaks, Designing Workspaces Where People Thrive and Business Grows, which challenges leaders to see the physical environment not as an afterthought, but as a strategic asset that reinforces purpose, builds trust, and inspires greatness. Today, we're going to dig into why the spaces that we inhabit shape who we become at work, why one size fits all design is gone for good, and how organizations can rethink the workplace entirely. Mette, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm so thrilled to be here and talk about something that I'm so passionate about.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I thought we could start a little bit with some of your background, and I know that you have spent more than 20 years designing spaces where people actually want to be, which is incredible. What initially sparked your passion for the impact that physical space has on human well-being?
It was actually from sort of seeing it firsthand. I was also in the corporate world, and I worked for years in conferences, and I was designing conferences, and I saw the impact that whatever we were doing was different from one to another in terms of the layout we had, the colors we chose, the people that came, and it was just so impactful. I was like, what is really going on? I've always been interested in design, and coming from Denmark is something that we're actually really think about our space a lot more than probably most people do. So it made me go back to school really and study this in depth, but more sort of also from a coaching perspective and just figuring out what thrives people in the office and actually make it work better for them, so you're not tired at the end of a work day. So there's just so much impactful things you can do, and so I learned all these great tools that I'm using in my business every day.
So, speaking of your Danish roots,
Yep.
clearly it influences your philosophy. I was reading in your book about, I'm hoping I'm saying this right, Hygge, the
Yep.
Danish concept of work joy.
Yep.
And I love this idea that, it sort of encompasses that concept of safety and warmth and the sense of belonging. I love how you describe that in your book.
Yep.
What elements of Danish design still show up in your work today? And what do you think has evolved into something that is uniquely Metaspace?
Yeah. So Hygge is a big thing for every Dane that you will speak to, and actually the Nordic countries we all kind of use it, and it's that feeling of being content. And you can't have stress and Hygge at the same time. It just doesn't. It just can't do. And then there's things that you can do in environments, and I use this every day, like all the times. Is that balance of elements that you're bringing into a space. It doesn't mean that you have to sit and have cocoa by a fire in the office space, but it's you just want people to feel relaxed and not stressed. And you can do that so much with the selection of colors and materials, a lot of natural products that we actually try to bring into the space, like plants, and it's making it sort of that you feel in nature where you just content. So in Denmark, I think we don't, for the first off, we don't have a lot of space, and it's quite dark in the winter time at this time of year. So we have been really good at learning to have more like a simplicity to space, like less is more, and really use the lighting that we have in the space to make the space an experience to be in. So it's not just like one overlight. So that is a big impact of the spaces that we do, for all organizations. We always bring Hygge into spaces. It's not something that people just feel it, and that's a kind of a welcoming kind of feeling that we bring in by creating balance.
Instead, I definitely know when a space is taking that into consideration when I walk into it, so
Yeah,
I appreciate that
yeah,
approach.
yeah.
Um, in your book, you also talk about space as a hidden resource that
Mm,
leaders may overlook. Was
yeah.
there a moment or a project or something in your career where you realized, like this is absolutely the truth? I'm seeing this firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, there's been many because I can see how people behave differently. It's not something you per se measure, but you can experiencing it. And we've done like my focus has been mostly work environments because that's been my passion, and that's just something a segment that I chose because I wanted to influence the people at the office because that's where we were spending a lot of time certainly in the past. But I've also done a lot of experience with children, which is really where you can see it firsthand. As adults, we typically cope. So I've been doing some classrooms for schools, and also daycares, and there you see the impact right away because we're changing like from more plastic to more wood furniture. You're changing the lighting from non-fluorescent lighting, which is really really bad. I mean, most people know that now, but actually to good LEDs, so you actually experience the space as it's supposed to be experienced in the whole spectrum of color, but also getting away from the more primary color that you see in a lot of environments. So we did like a class where the teacher came back to me after the first year, and he's like, "What happened?" So this is a grade 4 or whatever. You can't tell the kids behave in a different way, but he just saw how they were calmer, more open for learning. There was less conflicts, and she didn't know what we were expecting to happen, but it just happened. So that is like that's just I'm just like sort of thrilled to see it, and I see it also in work environment. People are coming to and using the kitchens in different ways, and it's just sort of behavior that you kind of nudge them, but then you also create the environments that makes them just behave in a different way.
Oh, that must be
All of
so
that.
special to be able to see that reaction in real time. That's so
Yes,
incredible.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing.
It's really special.
So I know that, a lot of what you do is purposeful and you're hired by companies to do it, but a lot of what we're seeing in the industry right now is that companies are reacting to things and only making changes when they see things happening. They're not being sort of proactive or, sort of maybe looking for cues within the workplace. But what does a proactive approach look like in your philosophy?
Well, we see it. I've just been out at a few talks here, both in Toronto but also in Copenhagen. I see a lot of scarcity actually happening. People don't really know how to react to how do we make people. So what they do is like, okay, mandating people back to work. We need to get them back to work, and I think that is not a very good, effective way to do it. Actually start with why do we even have an office today? Like, I believe in the office because it's a good place to collaborate and to be together, but it needs to be so much more than that because we don't collaborate all day by all means. Like none of us do. So you need to figure out if you decide to have an office space, then go back and say, like, what do you want that space to do? Why do we have it? What is the intention of that space? So I would start with that as any leader to just kind of take a step back and not just make decisions that doesn't seem to make sense. Like figure out what works for your particular company. And it's not one fits all. I know you've already mentioned that, but it's far from one fits all. There's a really, really big difference if you're a company with like 75% engineers or you are 50% sales force. Like it really matters what your business does and the difference that it makes in the world.
And I think you're bang on. I think any one of us that, we've all worked in an office, you can absolutely see the way different teams, collaborate or work or behave like within, they're either have headphones on or they're, have these big open spaces. So I appreciate that approach so much.
Yeah,
Um, and that leads us to this notion we at Innerspace certainly believe very strongly in this and the idea of human-centric design. And I know that it's a major theme in your work as well.
yeah.
What do you think organizations are missing the mark or that they misunderstand about what it truly means to be human centric?
Yeah, first of all, it is human. So I think a lot of people don't think it's human. It's like human resource. Like it's human. So what we need to figure out, if you have humans in your space, and we still have that, even though we have a lot of AI going on, and I think this is actually going to be even more so important, because we do need to have human to human. So we need to figure out how human behaves, and the only way to do that is sort of like, like I have actually a good slide I can send you later, but it's like what's going on beneath the iceberg. What is the behavior? What is making people inspired and get ideas and being able to focus, and what is the behavior that they have every day to be productive at work or anywhere they really are. And then there's the things above that we can actually control, but we need to figure out what does it look like beneath the iceberg. And that is where we can go in and actually get some data. And I do think that people do a lot of sort of research, like HR every month. Yeah, we're asking people this and that. And there's things that you guys do. You can actually see what's happening within the space. So I think the best thing you can do is do some deep research in what does your population look like? How many different types of people are there? Introvert, extrovert, women, men, everything in between. Like figuring out what it actually looks like, and not just like this is what we're gonna do, but have the courage to ask all the hard questions and the deeper questions, and then you can figure out what do we need to do above the iceberg. To Is it training? Is it the physical environment? Is it our communication? Is it the leadership? Like figuring out what it is that you can do in a strategic way to have the impact on the people that are there, so those humans are able to perform better. It's really figuring out what is the need for that, and what is your intention for as the company to experience the growth.
I love that call for being courageous and being curious.
Yeah.
Being curious about what is happening in your workspace.
Yeah.
And along those same lines, in your book, you also mentioned the emotional and physiological responses that people have to space. What
Yep.
are the most important in your mind, environmental cues rather, that influence behavior and well-being?
Um, so I've always been a big fan of putting in like natural products into space, and this is something we actually saw in the pandemic. Like the type of design we do has not changed over the last many years. What's happening is the needs have changed, or the openness has changed. And we learned that in COVID, where people were going for long walks in the greeneries, and they were like, oh my God, I get better ideas, I'm more calm. And so we always wanted to bring that into space. So something lively, like a plants, is sort of an easy hanging fruit, if you want. But also making sure that there's a nice flow. The colors that you choose in the space is also very critical. I see companies that like now the company logo is purple and orange or whatever, and then they put purple and orange everywhere without really thinking about, okay, what else do we have in the space? Or they go by trends, or they so you need to sort of figure out what is the balance that you need in that space. And certainly the lighting is very critical. And we know now, because there's so much ways to do research today, and something I'm also really passionate about. I work with some great researchers out in actually in Holland, that we do some great case studies. And you can actually see there's a basic one. If all the walls are red and you go in there, your body temperature actually feels like it's rising compared to if it was a blue room. So there's obviously evidence that it has an impact. How the materials and the lighting and the balance within the space that puts it all together, so we feel at ease as human beings in spaces.
It's incredible, actually. And it's funny, I was talking to someone at a work event or like a industry event not that long ago. They were talking about painting their baby's room, and ironically, they were talking about the same thing, that they didn't just want to choose a color. They were actually looking at the science of color, of what it was going to mean for her being in that space, because largely as a grown up, she
Yeah,
was the one that's going to be inhabiting that space. So
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
really interesting approach, actually.
yeah.
Um, I know that you've transformed organizations around the globe. What challenges do you think that leaders are consistently facing, like, whether it's in Europe or whether it's in Canada or in the United States? What do you think is the consistent sort of challenge that is facing leaders when they're rethinking their workspaces?
Yeah, it's actually back to the intent again. Why do they have it? And what is really critical that I'm speaking to a lot of global leaders about is creating a space that like you need it to be flexible. The strategy is like it doesn't go very far today, and that's why always our spaces have been super flexible, super agile, and you need to make it so it can change. It's an organic thing. It's the same like the people that you talk to, they're having those colors for their babies now, but when they're becoming teenagers and when, like, organizations needs to be flexible, and even more so today. So you have to think about the furniture you're buying. Is it anything that can be moving around in the space? So I think there's a lot of challenges with also the new generations that are coming into the workforce. They are brought up in a completely different way than we were brought up, younger, like you're younger than me, but like the generation is changing. Hierarchies in spaces are changing. It doesn't mean that we don't need them, but um, the workforce is changing and they want more freedom, they want more flexibility, but they also want more responsibility. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So it's really, as a leader, you need to really take this serious, um, because you're not gonna be able to attract the talents that you want, because they are gonna go to where they have to get this fulfillment also done, and where they can use their brain power in the most efficient way, because people want to be part of the success. They don't want just other people to have the success. The workforce is changing. So and more women are coming into the workforce too that are uh, working differently. So it's just acknowledging that it is a diverse um, work group that is out there on in the workforce.
It's so wonderful that we are changing or becoming more inclusive of the way that we think about spaces, not just but along gender lines, but also this idea of multi-generational, and that they might have different needs from a workspace. I think that's a pretty exceptional way to look at somewhere where all kinds of people are working.
Yeah.
I wonder, as a means of bringing this to life, if you could share an example in a space that you have redesigned, where you've seen this measurable improvement in culture and trust and collaboration or performance.
Yeah, yeah, we've been so lucky to work with Rakuten Kobo in their change after the pandemic, and what they've done, and it's quite incredible. And it's been a fantastic company to work with, because they're just so open-minded, and there's so much intention, exactly, behind the decisions that were being made. But they have actually cut their space in half, so half the footprint. I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but it's what worked for them, and they have grown at the same time. So how is that possible? How are they still attracting the talents that are coming into this space in the half of the amount of space? I mean, they're also global, so they already have offices many different places, but they have really managed to make the space work for their organization, and they have also accepted that not everybody's going to come into the office every day. They don't really want everybody to come into the office every day, because that would mean that they would need, and that's for every person. But they've created it for teams, and that comes in when it works. And obviously, it's also a logistic thing that you have to accept as a company, how to make it all work out. But they have managed to do this, and they have incredibly like, you just feel when you come in, it's like this culture of wanting to be there, and it's just people eat together, they engage, they learn about each other, but not every day, 5 days a week. So they really managed to cut the cost in terms of space. And if you ask any CFO what that means, it's a lot. And but then they have quality space, so it really works for that organization. But again, it also, we did a lot of research and a lot of questions before we even started doing the design for them. You need to figure out what's really working, not just like you said, like a reaction to, oh, now we, like, you need to take it up front and have intentions about why you have the space, and what you wanted to make do for you, and not, and more importantly, also your staff. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen the space. It's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. I saw the interview that you did, and it's absolutely beautiful what you've done there. And I was at the Kobo previous office, and this
Yeah.
new space is, it just feels absolutely stunning. And
Yeah.
you're right. The natural light, the repurposing of like the cafeteria also being an event space and a place
Yeah.
where people can work. Like it's just so incredible. It's lovely. It's absolutely
Yeah,
beautiful.
but I was not say, like, I mean, that's what worked for them, and they have a lot of red sofas. Other people are like, oh, I don't want red sofa. This is what works for them. That's why you need to figure out, every company has its own story, and yet I haven't been across any company in all my career that I couldn't find the reasoning why they existed, and get that to show as a, it's like you do a lot of marketing to your clients, but you also need to do marketing for your people. So they're part of the mission and the reasoning, the values that you have. So you need to kind of have that within your space. Yeah, and it's a very great space to be in.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
In your book, you also talk about, a well-designed workplace can reinforce purpose and inspire greatness. And I know that's a lot to ask from an office, but what do you think is the biggest mindset shift that leaders need to adopt in order to make that happen within their own workspaces?
To find the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it was actually, I had a conversation with someone from an insurance company,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Ah, it's insurance. It's like something people need, but what? Why do they exist? Like, you can always go in and find, like, what is the, why are you doing what you're doing, and how does that have an impact? So I find a lot of companies that, like, you're in silos, and then maybe you have a certain part of a bigger picture that you're working on. But if you can get that part, like, if you can sort of feel that bigger picture in the space. Actually, we did the National Ballet. It's a very sort of different kind of company than sort of the typical tech companies. But what we discovered when we were in our discovery sessions is, like, we brought all the leaders from the different departments into the room, including Karen Kane. It was pretty exciting, like, for me to be part of all these amazing people. But what they were all trying to do is getting the ballerina up on the stage. But everybody had a part of that, and you needed to, even the, I mean, the ticketing people, but also the production team, the people that were sitting and doing all the sewing, and the trainers, and you need everybody to be part of that and feel that they're all part of that. Like, when you manage to do that as a company, and just have, not just have the silos, but have everybody engage and feel like, that's when you create really a strong team. And it's not just to put enough to just put your values up on a wall. I've been in companies where they're in the boardroom and nobody reads them, and nobody really knows what it is even. But if you kind of make an effort to actually use them in your space, like, actually as activities even. I worked at a company there, had, like, curiosity was one of the things. They had like four different things, but the curiosity, the way that we did that in the space, is people brought in books. They had, like, a library, and it's like curiosity about your coworkers. And it also showed, like, when you kind of know each other, it's not that you have to be best buddies with everybody, but it, when shit hits the fan, you show up for the people that you care about. So it's a way to just kind of use it in the space and actually make it into part of an activity.
Absolutely love that. I absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. Is even if you know something about someone's background that, you can relate to it, it gives you a starting off point. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like collaboration becomes easier. It's just,
yeah,
I love that approach. I think it's lovely.
yeah.
So, we at Innerspace, certainly we are big on being deeply curious and having hypotheses about why things are happening in your space and actually looking at the way people are moving through your space.
Mhm.
Do you see a role, or how do you see the role of behavioral data or space analytics or tools like Innerspace
Yeah.
playing a role in sort of the next generation of workplace design?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, it's the data. And it's not because you need to sort of see, oh, this person is so much on his computer. Like I hear data being sort of overused, but if you can figuring out again, what is the activities, what is the footprint, how are these meeting rooms being used? Or I see a lot of these like 6 people meeting rooms and it's for one person or 2 people, and that's not good affection use of space. I also hear these stories about you're in open space and you have, it was from one of the banks, like, and you have a confidential conversation and there's not enough places you can go in and have that confidential call with one of your clients, which makes it like the book the calls when they're at home, and then they may not even have the privacy there. So you need to figure out what do people really need in the space, and by figuring out like, do you actually have enough of those rooms or call rooms, or do you have enough of certain size rooms, and are there certain areas because like that are being used more than others. It's super important to know, like what's working and what's not working, and the only way you can do that is through some data, and obviously questionnaires and all that. But I think when you have data on the, it's speaking, right? It's telling what's actually happening. So again, it's about having the curious to be curious about your space, but also the courage to figure out what it actually is and not just predict by your what you think. So I think that's very important.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, of course.
So looking ahead to 2026, the new year, new me, and beyond, what excites you the most about the future of space design as we head into a brand new year?
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited because I'm seeing some movements happening, of the conscious leaders. I think there's a big difference between leaders, but I think the conscious leaders are certainly waking up, and they are thinking this is important, and they're at the forefront of things. I'm thrilled if we can have more impact on making more people happy at work, but not just happy at work, but also more productive at work. And that creates work-life balance. It makes our more healthy society. I think if we just kind of show respect for each other, and I mean, yeah, I think it's on a positive spin, at least in what I'm seeing in the work environments. Lots of challenges, obviously, but I think it's a lot to do with mindset and being courageous to actually take these steps, and that will have
So
an impact on their business.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Let's end on a call to action for leadership. So, if I said to you, what advice do you have for leaders that really want to move beyond the cool office trends or the open office trend, and as a means of sort of solving their problems, and design spaces that truly and genuinely support humans beings thriving in a space? What is that advice?
Well, first of all, trend is something that goes away. Like, so if you ask me what is the color of this the winter, we're in the winter, I would have no idea. I actually have no idea, and I would never go by a trend. You need to figure out what works for you. So I think if I was a leader, I would just sort of take a step back. So what is the situation you're actually in? What are you trying to attract, in terms of the staff you want to have? Like really kind of to think deeply about why you have your space. What is it costing you? What is the cost for not doing something about it if it's not working? It is the amount of money that it costs to actually do it right compared to per person is insignificant. It's the return on investment by actually making it work for for your company. It's super powerful. So I would just, as a leader, I would like. I mean, what you can do, we're doing this with some organizations. If we get to work with them, is actually do some pilots, and you can take a section of your company if you don't want to do the whole company, but just be curious about what is actually going on in people's minds, behaviors, um, that is affecting how they work on a daily basis.
It's incredible advice.
Mm.
Mette, this has been such an inspiring conversation. And I think the biggest takeaway is simple but powerful. When you design for the human beings that actually work in those spaces, everything else gets better. Engagement, productivity, culture, retention, creativity, everything, even as you mentioned previously, the bottom line.
Mhm.
So, CFOs, you may want to pay attention to this as well. Um, Thank you for sharing your wisdom and for reminding us that workplaces are living systems. They need to evolve, adapt, and reflect the people that are working inside of them. And if you'd like to pick up a copy of Metta's book, which is a fantastic resource, by the way, we've included the link in the description. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, please share this episode or send it to a colleague who you think would like to bring more humanity, purpose, and insight into their workplace strategy. Metta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been such a pleasure.
You've been listening to the Impact Podcast by Innerspace. I'm your host, Jennifer Shannon. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.